So the workshop agenda tonight, I'll present a financial overview, condition of the water and wastewater systems, major capital improvements required, the 2016 rate approval process, fiscal year 2016-17, what took place, and then also fiscal year 2017-18 approved rates. So this is going to be a combination of presentations that took place in 2016 and then updated for current conditions. So for the purpose of rates is to ensure adequate revenues in the water and wastewater enterprise funds for operation and maintenance, debt service, and capital payments. The revenue requirement is based on operating costs plus debt service payments plus funds for capital investment. It should be noted that water and wastewater enterprise funds are separate from the general fund and can only be used to fund the water and wastewater services of the city. So the operating costs are combined of fixed costs and variable costs. So the fixed costs do not vary by the volume treated, and examples include raw water, staffing, maintenance, and repairs, versus variable costs vary depending upon the volume treated. So that's power, utilities, and chemicals. So one of the questions that I've received is that, how many full-time equivalent positions have been added to the budget over the last few years? When you think about the increase in rates, that's directly related to an increase in people. And so what this slide notes is that going back to the fiscal year 9-10, during that fiscal year, we actually had more positions in water and wastewater than we do today. And so this is a slide showing the number of full-time equivalent positions over the last 9-year period. And it's important because it shows that staffing levels have been fairly constant for the past several years. Another element of operating costs is debt service. As the city has financed projects over time through either the sale of bonds or obtaining a loan, the city is committed to making the payments for those obligations. So here are the current debt service requirements for the water fund. And I want to note in this last year we've had basically two additions. One would be the Optera Bank of America loan, which at the water treatment plant was for the installation of solar panels. And so this project, that debt service payment is paid through savings of electrical costs. And then the most recent is the California Renewable Energy Bond for a battery storage project at the water treatment plant, which is also will be funded through savings. Here's a similar slide for wastewater. And again, this one includes a smaller project through Optera, and that was basically for some lighting upgrades at the wastewater treatment plant, and then a clean renewable energy bond for the installation of a large solar facility at the wastewater treatment plant. Both of those projects will also be funded through energy savings. And then the third element related to operating costs is your capital investment. This slide shows spikes within the last, going back to 2005, 2006, related to large-scale projects within the water system. Some of those major projects include the raw water intake and fish screen, and then also low-lift pump station security improvements and the water treatment plant expansion to 36 MGD. Similarly for wastewater, you see a large spike in fiscal year 13-14, and that's basically related to the downtown collection system, rehabilitation replacement project, oxygen reactors, and 12 kV switchgear improvements at the wastewater treatment facility, and then the emergency wastewater outfall line project that we had to do in 2012. So the sources of your funds are capital revenues and operating revenues, and those total the revenues received. Revenues received are, for operating revenues, are comprised of water sales, backflow prevention fees, and interest on investments, and capital revenues are comprised of extension fees. So when somebody comes in to connect to city water, if there's a water line existing in front of their home, they would then pay for half of that water line to reimburse the city for the costs associated with constructing that line. Connection fees, That's a property share of the water treatment plant if they connect to city water, surcharge revenues, and interest on investments. Similarly, for wastewater, you have operating revenues and capital revenues, very similar to the water fund. The workshop tonight focuses on the water sales and wastewater service charges, which are collected from our customers through the established water and wastewater rates. So the water and wastewater system condition. So the water treatment plant was placed into operation in 1969, expanded in 1999 to 24 million gallons per day, again in 2007 to 36 million gallons today, and has a current permitted capacity of 42 million gallons per day. When we look at the average demands over the last few years, we can see that the winter demands have stayed fairly consistent. However, the summer demands, you can see, decreased pretty significantly during the drought years. Here's an aerial photo of our water treatment plant. We have the raw water line that comes in from the Feather River. The water then goes through flocculation basins, sedimentation tanks, and then either membrane filters or rapid sand filters. And then it goes into be disinfected and then goes out into the distribution system. And I would like to note that we always give tours of the water treatment plant, so if anybody's interested, just contact Public Works and we can coordinate that tour. For the water distribution system, we have 265 miles of transmission and distribution mains that we maintain, in sizes ranging from 3 inches to 36 inches, and 6 storage tanks within the system. As part of the rate study process, we identified priority projects at the water treatment plant. We prioritized those 1 through 4. And last year, through the rate process, council selected to fund priority projects 1 and 2 and not fund priority projects 3 and 4. So the total included in the rate study for the priority 1 and 2 projects is $6,375,000. And that includes electrical and instrumentation improvements, an aquifer storage recovery / second well, fluoride system replacement, security improvements, and carbon feed system replacement. And then we have a few pictures at the water treatment plant. This is just showing some of the electrical and instrumentation components are original to the 1969 plant. The condition of some of the concrete elements is needing to be rehabbed or repaired. Here's pictures of our sedimentation flock basin. The fluoride system. And then, as mentioned previously, within the water distribution system, we have an annual need to recoat water storage reservoirs, replace water mains, and replace water services and water meters. And so if you look at the total cost of that, just for the replacement or rehab of water mains, that was an estimate at the time of $27.4 million. What council selected to do was fund these improvements annually at the amount of $1 million. Here are pictures of 2 of our distribution tanks, San Brandon tank and Harder tank. And just as these are painted on the outside, they're also coated on the inside to prevent corrosion. Our water distribution system, we continually have leaks within our water distribution system. We recently went through the process of doing a water loss control project where we identified that we lose approximately 1 million gallons per day through water losses. And you'll never recover that amount, but you could recover a good portion of it through addressing leaks within the distribution system. Moving on to the wastewater treatment plant. It was placed into operation in 1972, expanded in 2005. The current permitted capacity is 10.5 million gallons per day, and our current average flow is about 6.5 million gallons per day, with solids coming into the facility of approximately 11,000 pounds per day. With the rains that we had this last year, it brought the groundwater table up significantly within Yuba City, and so we started experiencing some infiltration inflow issues within the distribution system or within the collection system. And so part of what we did this last year was identify lift stations that had increased flows and then start TVing those lines and inspecting manholes to figure out where that water's coming from. So we're now putting together a project to identify and address those I&I issues. Here's an aerial photo of our wastewater treatment facility. As you can see, this one is a lot more complex in terms of treatment processes than the water treatment plant. And I should note, both plants are 24-hour a day, 7-day a week, year-round operations where there's somebody at the plant at all times to run the plant. Again, the city provides tours to the wastewater treatment facility, and you can just contact Public Works to schedule a tour. The wastewater collection system, the city maintains 173 miles of sewer mains, ranging in size from 6 inches to 42 inches, and 17 sewer lift stations, which are pumping stations within the collection system. As part of the rate process last year, we also identified priority projects, and the council funded the priority 1 and 2 projects. So this list is just the priority 1 and 2 projects with the biggest project on here is the new outfall diffuser at $11.5 million, and I'll speak to that in just a moment. And here are the priority 3 and 4 projects that were not funded. And so the total included in the rate study for priority 1 and 2 projects is $26,970,000. Here's a picture of the digester lids, the bar screen, which needs to be rehabilitated and replaced. Yeah, so the digester, basically, what it sounds like, it digests the sewage as it comes in, and it starts to help form the solids so that you can then separate the solids from the water and then take that solid and dispose of it, and then take the water and treat it. The bar screen is at the headworks of the wastewater treatment facility, and it basically becomes the screen. So anything that comes through rags, foreign debris, that type of grit, will come through this, and the bar screen will then basically filter that out. And so what this is doing is stuff gets caught in these screens, and these rakes come up and remove it from the screens. The dewatering system takes the basic sludge, and we use a belt press system where it actually presses it to get the liquid out so that you can then take the solids and dispose. The solids are disposed of at Recology landfill, and they're used as daily landfill cover. And so this is a complex piece of machinery with these series of belts that just press it. And then again, electrical and instrumentation improvements. Some of the electrical and instrumentation elements are original to the plant. And then the contact basin is where the treated wastewater gets chlorinated so that it can be then discharged into either the Feather River or our ponds located on the east side of the Feather River. Which takes us to our outfall diffuser. So in 2012, there were major changes in the Feather River channel at Shanghai Falls. And so previously, the Feather River used to cross pretty much this entire channel, creating the falls. What happened was it actually carved out this channel even more. So under somewhat normal operating conditions, the water is contained to this portion of the river. And so our diffuser, which you can see right here, is now exposed. And so previously we were pretty much able to discharge out of the diffuser, which is a long pipe with a series of ports where the water discharges, and then it would mix with the river water and flow downstream. Our discharge permit requires that we have a certain amount of water cover over it in order for us to be able to discharge. And so when the river changed and we weren't able to maintain that water over the the diffuser, we were forced to start discharging to our ponds. And so that requires additional labor in terms of testing of the water when it's discharged in the ponds, and then also the maintenance of the ponds. So the project that we're working on now, which has the cost estimate of $11.5 million, is to relocate the diffuser downstream, and we've done a series of studies to try to identify the most stable location of the Feather River, and the geomorphologist has identified that this seems to be a fairly stable location of the river. At this point, with the Oroville Dam incident, we need to evaluate how much sedimentation has taken place and see if this is still a stable portion of the river, to see if this is still the preferred location. If it is, what will take place is we will connect to our existing outfall line, come along the land side of the levee, and then cut across down here with that new diffuser. And then within the wastewater collection system, we estimated that in order to address failing or lines that need to be rehabilitated in the collection system, that cost is approximately $33 million. And then also we have lift stations, those lift stations that we need to maintain. So council selected as part of the rate study process to fund those at $1 million annually. And so here are some pictures of our wastewater collection system. Throughout the system, we have some older manholes that are made from bricks. We have a TV truck where we can actually put a camera down into the pipes and inspect the pipes to see what type of condition that they're in. So this is a picture from when we placed the TV camera in. This is a concrete pipe, and you can see that the cement has actually been dissolved based from the gases within the sewer pipe, so it's exposed aggregate, and so that wall of that concrete pipe is getting thinner and thinner, and as it does that, it limits our ability to then clean the pipe, because every time you clean the pipe, you are eroding it more and drawing back more rock. And so your options for this type of situation are to either line it with a plastic liner if you catch it early enough. If you don't catch it early enough, then you have to remove and replace the line. And then here's some other pictures of concrete sewer lines within the system. So here's an up-close picture where you can start to see at that point the pipe's failing and you start getting cracks. A lot of times you'll get a lot of root intrusion into the pipes, and so then we do root control. But as those roots start to invade, they get bigger and bigger and start pushing those pipes even more. So in 2016, early 2016, we had a series of workshops with the City Council to establish water and wastewater rates for the next 5 years. And what prompted that, in 2011, Council adopted a 5-year plan for rates. The rates went into effect, and then the drought hit. And so the revenues declined to the point that we weren't able to fund the operation and maintenance expenses, debt service, and then also capital expenses going long term. And so we said, we need to prepare a rate study, present that to council, and then have go through a Proposition 218 process to have new rates approved. And then here's the similar slide for wastewater, which wasn't as impacted by the drought, but there was still a little bit of a difference between the revenues received and the revenues anticipated. So January 12th, 2016, we had a workshop with council in which they reviewed the operational needs, the condition of the systems, and major capital improvements required. Basically, the slides I just showed you. On February 9th of 2016, there was a second workshop where I presented 3 alternatives for proposed rates and reviewed the Proposition 218 process. So the 3 alternatives that the council reviewed or considered were a 2-year rate plan that only covered operation and maintenance and debt service expenses, a 5-year rate plan in which option 1 was O&M expenses, debt service, and the priority 1 and 2 projects, and option 2, which was O&M expenses, debt service, and all priority projects. And so all three options proposed to reduce the baseline allocation for the water bill by 32% because that was the city's mandate from the state at that time to reduce water consumption. On March 1st, 2016, Council conducted a public hearing and selected to proceed with the 5-year rate plan option 1, which was the O&M expenses, debt service, and the priority 1 and 2 projects. But they directed staff to consider increasing the proposed baseline allocation. A lot of our customers came forward and expressed concern about reducing that baseline allocation. On April 5th, Council adopted the water and wastewater rate study and authorized the Proposition 218 process and proceeded with the modified proposed baseline allocation. And so what does that mean? So originally, staff proposed a 32% reduction. This was the baseline allocation previously as part of the 2011 rate study. Council said this is too much of a reduction. We want you to consider a modified proposed baseline allocation, which was then based upon the 29% conservation mandate at that time. And so this is what Council went forward with as part of the Proposition 218 process, this modified proposed baseline allocation. In June 8th, Council again conducted a public hearing. Between the previous meeting and June 8th, we went through the Proposition 218 process. So at the June 8th meeting, the protests were tabulated. 2,532 protests were received, and 9,374 protests were needed for a majority protest. At that meeting, there was a significant amount of input from our customers that they still wanted to have other options for the rates. They really wanted to keep the baseline allocation at that higher allocation as it was as part of the 2011 process, and they wanted to have Council consider adopting rates below the 218 process. And then on June 21st, Council adopted updated water and wastewater ordinances. So July 19th, staff brought forward some options for Council for the water rates, and Council adopted resolutions setting the water rates below the Prop 218 approved amount and the wastewater rates at the Prop 218 amount, and those rates went into effect August 1st. So these are the rates that were approved through the Proposition 218 process. So it reflects that modified baseline allocation and then the actual rates that were approved. Here are the rates approved for wastewater as part of the 218 process. And then we get into fiscal year 2016-17. So what Council authorized for fiscal year 2016-17 was based upon the customer feedback. They did reduce the rates from the Proposition 218 amount, and they kept the baseline allocation at the 2011 amount. So that was a 4-unit increase over what was approved through the Prop 218 process, and then for a 1-inch service, and then 65 cents below the rates that were approved through the 218 process for water. In 2016-17, we've still seen a tremendous amount of conservation. I've updated this to include May 2017, so this is additional data from the last council meeting where I presented this. So on average, we have 23.9% conservation from July 2016 to May 2017. Which is significant as the rate model is based upon a 15% conservation level. And so how did that impact our water sales? We had budgeted $11.94 million for water sales, and our projected is $11.1 million. And then for wastewater services, we budgeted $11.28 million, and our projected is $11.45 million. So we're pretty close to being on track with wastewater. And then recently, Council adopted rates for fiscal year 17-18. So Last year, as part of this process, council directed staff to bring forward recommendations for water and wastewater rates at the budget study session that is held with council every May. So I believe it was May 23rd. We had a budget study session with council in which we presented proposed rates for fiscal year 17-18. And then at the last council meeting, we brought forward those rates. And so for fiscal year 17-18, the proposed rates still continue at that higher baseline allocation. And then this is the rate that would be for the various size services. So the flow rate per excess HCF is increasing, and then the rates are increasing as well. But looking over time, where we're projecting, so for fiscal year 17-18, the rate of $32.58 for 1-inch service is below the Proposition 218 amount, and the flow rate, excess flow rate of $1.67 is below the 218 amount. And if conditions were to continue as they did this last year in terms of that higher conservation level, this is what we would be projecting for water rates over the remaining years of the rate study. So for fiscal year 17-18, and I'll focus on the 1-inch water service. So again, the baseline allocation is 4 units higher than what was approved through Prop 218. And the actual water rate is $1.33 below what was approved through the 218 process. So as part of the budget study session, council asked staff to do a regional comparison of how Yuba City's rates compare to other agencies. And so here's the water comparison, and we have a lot of agencies on this list, but what's important is here's Yuba City's current rate and Yuba City's proposed rate. So we're at the low end of the spectrum, and the agencies included on this list include Gridley, West Sacramento, Roseville, Colusa, Placer County Water Agency, OPUD, Chico, Sacramento, Davis, Woodland, and Oroville, with Oroville being at the high end of the spectrum. And this is based upon an average use of 20 HCF. So with the proposed rates that were approved by council at the last council meeting, these are what the projected revenues are. And so these will fund the operation and maintenance expenses, debt service, and then will help to fund capital projects. And one important, when we were going into the rate study last year, particularly on the water fund, there was concern that we were going to dip below a debt coverage ratio of 1.2, which our bond covenants required that if we dipped below or were projected to dip below, we needed to take action to increase the rates. And so that was one of the things that were really prompting staff and the council to move forward with the rate increases. And so with the rate increases that have taken place, we have been able to maintain above that 1.2 threshold. And then for wastewater, the rates are the same as the 218 rates. And again, council asked for information in terms of how Yuba City's wastewater rates compare to other agencies. And here are Yuba City's current rates and the proposed, and this is the same list of agencies that I listed for water. In this situation, Colusa's at the high end and Chico's at the low end. So again, with the rates proposed, we anticipate being able to fund our O&M expenses, debt service, and then capital projects as outlined as part of the rate study. And then our debt coverage ratio again stays above the 1.2. So what does this mean for a single family dwelling with a 1-inch water service? Under the winter average condition where a property would use 11 units of water, their current total bill would be $72.43. Under the rates that were recently approved by council, it would be $81.62, and the Prop 218 bill would be $82.95. And then
Can you give water and then wastewater separate both of them?
so the water portion would be $32.58, and the sewer portion would be $49.04. And so that's for an average. So you'll notice on here, sewer stays the same because for single family dwellings, it's just a flat rate. So it's going to be $49.04. As water usage increases, so if you had an annual average use of 20 units, your water bill would be $40.95. If you have a high summer usage of 31 units, which is really high, your bill would be $59.35. And so council approved these rates at the last council meeting, and they will go into effect on July 1st. So with that, that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Yeah, so the question was how do we justify 1 million gallons per day of leakage? So when you have that many miles of water distribution system and it's all underground, you have leaks that pop up that you can see and that you can address, but you also have leaks that are those slow leaks that can just drip down that never pop up to the surface. And so there's different techniques that you can use to try to identify those leaks through sounding of the system, to try to hear where that water's coming out. You also have losses, maybe at a water service connection where it's leaking. At some point, it's not economically feasible to try to fix all of the leaks. You're going to invest so much money trying to fix it that you're actually going to lose. You're not going to lose it. So you have to find that balance point of trying to recover as much water as you can without making it unfeasible economically. We actually used an American Water Works Association. The state now has a requirement that as of October, we have to submit a leak audit report. And so we went through a consultant who specializes in this. We analyzed all of our finance records. We analyzed all of our data that we have on leaks. We went through tested water meters to see how accurate they were. And through all of that, you just keep collecting data and putting it through this program. And through that, you're able to determine how much actual water loss you have. And so that takes into... No, it's pretty objective. It's pretty scientifically, they've worked through it to the point that you're taking into consideration, how much people are stealing in terms of you'll have contractors that come up and connect to a hydrant and take water without having a hydrant meter. But they pour through so much data, and we've metered all the outputs at the water treatment plant. We then collect all of the meter data within the distribution system, compare the two, figure out how accurate those records are, and then we're able from that to come down and determine how much. Now, it's not $1 million every day as you have higher water use. Million gallons, excuse me. So during the summer months, your loss is going to be higher because you're putting more water into the system. During the winter months, it's going to be a little bit less than that because you're putting less water into the system. But on average, they calculated 1 million gallons per day.
They put out a paper on why they flush hydrants.
Yes.
When you see that kind of waste and the number of miles and the usage, that's why you'd have to flush them. They put all that water into the...
The purpose of flushing the hydrants is to scour the water lines, to remove any sedimentation in the water lines, to improve water quality. You have some water lines that don't have a lot of turnover. You might not have a lot of homes on them. And so you want to make sure that you are maintaining high water quality levels within those systems. And so, there's a recommendation that you flush your hydrants on somewhat of a regular basis to make sure that you're keeping that distribution system, you're maintaining the quality of the system. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. What do you say, dear?
Thank you.
We get our water bills, and it seems you're 2 months behind.
So they read the meters on the first of every month. So for instance, they'll read the meters June 1st. They collect that data. That then goes out towards the end of June in your bill. So you receive your bill kind of the end of June, early part of July. So it's about a month behind at that point.
Well, the way that I read ours, well, by the way, I apologize for what I said here at your last meeting when I was against your 218. They've taken all the information that I was looking at from the newspaper.
Yeah,
And I was wrong.
that's okay.
But on the water bills, our water, I think we are conservative, but in the summer months, our high bill last summer was $92.
Was that water and wastewater or water only?
Water.
Okay.
The reason being is we've got redwood trees. But what we have done is, and I think a lot of people have kind of done this, we've just let our back lawn go.
Yeah.
That's terrible. That's, yeah, lovely. But the thing is that our water bill when it comes in can't determine what our next water bill is going to be because we can't figure out what days or how much we're using on each round of sprinklers. Could be some way that we could tap in and see how much water we're using on the same way as you can, and not with PG&E, but like, you can take a look at what your electrical was on a daily basis.
Right.
Is the city something like that for the water?
We had brought forward a project to council. We were submitting a grant application to change to cellular meters. And with cellular meters, our customers could log in to a website and get their information pretty much in real time. The cellular meters are more expensive than the radio read meters, and so that's why through the grant process, it was going to actually be feasible. We've learned we did not receive that grant, and so we're looking at other options in terms of either other grant opportunities to try to get that cellular service. But so that's one option. If you have a newer meter, we can actually go out and download consumption information and for a specific time frame and provide you a report that would show you during that specific time frame what you used and when. That would help you if you have your sprinklers on a regular cycle to be able to see how much you're using when. And so that it wouldn't be you logging in, we'd be going out and downloading the data for you, but we could provide it to you.
Oh, so I can phone you and you can come out and.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And my other, not a complaint. Because of where we have high pressure and low pressure.
Yeah.
And a lot of our high pressure goes in the street, a lot of our low pressure goes in the street. Now that I know what the cost of water is around 22 cents a 100 gallons. I'll take a look at it and maybe when I find the water going in the street, I can blame it on the city and just deduct it from my bill. Do you think that makes sense?
I don't think that would work. I will say we are, council approved a contract for a water master plan. So as part of that master plan, we are updating our water model. We'll be doing hydrant flow testing next week for calibration of that water model. And because we recognize that we have pressure issues within the distribution system. And so we'll be looking at either surge tanks or something like that within the distribution system to help with those pressure fluctuations. Because they can be pretty significant at times.
Yes, because I've had you come out and put your gauges on and we do know that up and down time.
Yeah.
We're at the end of the line.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. He had a question first.
Yeah, on the water loss, is this just a estimate by somebody using some type of system to figure have all the water that comes in to you? Water treatment plant, would that be?
Correct.
Okay. All the water that comes through the meter,
Correct.
so there isn't out on how much water you were paid for. You should be able to determine
Right, so as part of this process, what they did, so we have the pipes at the water treatment plant metered. So the raw water pipe that comes in, the discharge pipes that go out to the system. So we can tell the difference between, what's coming in from raw water and what's going out as treated water. And then we have the meter consumption information from the entire distribution system. And so we can calculate the difference of what we're putting out into the distribution system versus what our customers are receiving at the meters. And so there's many reasons for the difference. One being the water losses through cracks in the pipes, others being people stealing water, that type of thing.
Cracks in your pipes and the treatment system.
In the distribution system.
We can't hear you on the recorder, so.
What? But the water, you take all, you've got 19,000 meters.
Yeah.
You take all the water that went through all those meters.
And we compare it to the
compared to
meter
what
at the water
came-
treatment
What
plant.
came through, what went out of your treatment. If you have a loss in your treatment system, then that's something else. You should be able to find that. I mean, that should be a pretty simple thing in telling you there. But you got all the other 19,000 meters out there, but you total up what the usage is there with what you process through, and that should tell you how much you're losing. I mean, it shouldn't be, I can't see where there's such a complication of finding out what, well, yeah, we're losing water here, and I mean, it's some kind of scenario, whatever you use to whatever system they use, it's all numbers, it's there.
Right, yeah, so the data's there. It's collecting the data, checking the accuracy of the data. You want to make sure that you have accurate data, that your meters are reading accurately. And so you go out and pull sample meters throughout the distribution system and run them through testing to make sure that they're registering accurately so that you can have a test sample. And then you collect all of the information, you input how much contractors took through hydrant meters, and you bring that all together to figure out what your total loss is, but then you drill down even further than that to figure out where the losses went. Because there's different factors of where the water could go.
There's a hydrant across.
Oh, you need to speak into the microphone because they're recording this. So Terrell's going to bring you the microphone.
Where's the microphone?
Right there.
Across from us, I'm still confused about this $1 million gallons. How much consumption does Yuba City do? There's these figures on the average in the winter versus the summer in a day, this population of 60,000 plus people.
So that goes back to the slide. Okay, so this slide right here shows, so in 2016, in the winter, on average, we use 7.6 million gallons per day. And in the summer, we used on average 16.2 million gallons per day.
And in each of those figures, $1 million is lost somewhere.
So that's what I was saying. So in the summer months, when you have higher flows, that number is going to be a little bit more. In the winter months, when your flows are less, the number is going to be less. So it's not accurate to say, oh, it's this certain percentage, because it's not. It's really based upon the amount of flows that you have going through your system at any given time.
There's, you mentioned about the diffuser and going down south.
Correct.
And going on the land side of the levee.
Yes.
But if you have to go through the levee, what do you do with the slurry well?
You actually would go up and over. So you would go up the levee, and then once you get above that slurry well portion, you would go across and then back down. Because we currently have a line that crosses the levee down there, and that's basically what it does.
Okay, and the final question, we live on, well, there's a fire hydrant across the street from us. Across on the city side. I've seen trucks pull up there and water in it. Should I snitch on them?
Yes, absolutely.
I never paid any attention for it because I didn't look to see if they had a sign on the door.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't want, number one, any trucks.
Regular, but I have seen.
Yeah, any trucks that connect to a city hydrant, we need to make sure that they have an air gap so they can't contaminate our system. We don't want them to backfeed into the water distribution system. And so we have a process of inspecting those trucks, and then we can tag them to make sure that we've inspected. But we do have issues where people will just go up to a hydrant and connect and steal water. And so if the public sees that, we'd appreciate a call to Public Works so that we can follow up on those individuals. Because not only are there's the potential for them to contaminate the system, but they're also stealing water, which has a value associated with it. Thank you. All right, any other questions? Phil, you got to wait for the microphone.
Is there any potential of the city raising the amount of water we can get, seeing as how we're over the drought? You say that the average in the summer months is 30 units. With all of the water that we have going down the river right now, and the city doesn't use all the water, correct?
Correct.
So why not let some of us have decent looking lawns at a reasonable price rather than have ugly lawns at the same price?
So what we would encourage for this next fiscal year, if people, we don't want to say just use more water because we still have to consider water as a resource. But if you look at the amount of conservation that took place in fiscal year 16-17, that directly impacted the water rates this year. If water consumption increases in fiscal year 17-18, then I would anticipate that council would have more options next year when they're looking at the rates for fiscal year 18-19. And so those options, the Prop 218 is the maximum, so it's the maximum rate, and then also the minimum level of the baseline allocation that you could go to. And so there is flexibility for council to either increase the baseline allocation as they did this year to the 15 units for 1-inch service, or they could either maintain the water rates or, consider a lower increase than what's projected for next year. So that would be discussed next May as part of the budget council study session. And so at that study session, I would present the fiscal year 17-18 data to date and make a recommendation to council for the rates for fiscal year 18-19.
I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
No, thank you.
All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I greatly appreciate all of you that came tonight. And great questions. Thank you very much.